I'm continuing to be inspired by Jeffrey Hopkins' book, A Truthful Heart, Practices of Benefiting and Connecting with Others. And we're finally getting down to actually thinking about love and compassion. And there's a beautiful piece in this chapter called Meditating on Love. And what he says is it's important to think about the causes of happiness. In Buddhism, the causes of happiness are usually depicted as either practicing refraining from harm or creating virtue. And His Holiness has that very famous saying that bottom line in Buddhism, if at all possible, please help and be kind to one another. And if you can't do that, at least don't harm them. He said, if you want to cut to the chase of the essence of Buddhism, that is what it is. And that they are a powerful way to internalize. That little quote is a really powerful way to internalize these principles of love and compassion that Jeffrey has been working us through this book for 2/3 of the way, and how by thinking about what we've been practicing as far as the 7-point cause and effect in this chapter. So equanimity, being able to finally, if we can feel in our hearts what it means for ourselves to be happy and not to suffer. And then he ran us through a whole meditation on starting with our very, very best friend, then our second friend, then our third friend, strangers and enemies, to see in their own minds and hearts that just like us, they want to be happy and not suffer. And then after internalizing or getting more familiar with that, and then we start to see the kindness that they have actually displayed towards us. And he takes us through the friend of this life and then replace that friend with other friends, neutral people and enemies, and using our imagination to then take them back to previous lives and imagine them being our nearest and dearest and showing incredible kindness, being our mothers, being our best friends, our mentors. And then after long periods of familiarization with that aspect of this practice, then you start wanting and wishing to repay kindness, to really hope that they have everything they need as far as not only happiness, but also the causes of happiness. So in this chapter on meditating on love, he puts together these points of equanimity, seeing all sentient beings are wanting to be happy and not suffer, to seeing their kindness, repaying their kindness. He's interweaving them with the initial scope practice of cultivating virtue and refraining from harm, and how you can take practices common with the initial scope and interrelate them with these advanced scope teachings and how they sort of care for each other. So he says that cultivating the realization of equanimity, which is the similarity of oneself and others, in wanting happiness and not to suffer, undermines the impulse to take their life, to take things from them that are not freely given, and to engage in unwise and unkind sexual behavior. So by just bringing everybody into equal and caring concern, equal as far as wanting happiness and not suffering, just like us, it actually helps us when we look at them to refrain and not want to harm, to not take things from them, and not to use them. He calls it coercive sex, having sex without thinking about feelings and emotions and intimacy. The second one, he says, is cultivating the knowledge of closeness of others over the course of lifetimes. He's really into using our imagination and taking our friends, strangers, and enemies and walking them back into previous lives and putting them in these scenarios and situations with us where they really care and love us deeply, and vice versa. He says if we can do this by acknowledging the closeness and wishing to reciprocate their kindness, it weakens the pull to lie to them, to speak divisively and cause disharmony between them and others, between them and ourselves, to bark at them harshly, or to just rattle on senselessly. So we cultivate this knowledge of how close we've been, how we wish to reciprocate their kindness, that we're going to start thinking twice about what we're saying to them, that we're going to be a little bit more mindful of how we relate as far as our speech goes. Then cultivating joy in others' favorable qualities. So this whole idea about, once again, we've gone through the 3 non-virtues of body. Now we've gone through the 4 non-virtues of speech, using these as antidotes. The third one is cultivating joy at other people's wealth, fame, status, knowledge, scholarship, knowing of the Dharma, relieves the pangs of jealousy and the wish that they lose what they have and you get it for yourself. So this is the antidote to covetousness, wishing to acquire what other people have and then to spend a lot of time sort of figuring out and strategizing on how we can do that. Then cultivating a wish for others' happiness and the causes of happiness, or really connecting with that, holds you back from slipping into wishing them harm. So thinking about this deep wish of what happiness is and the causes for happiness, then this mental pathway of malice can be counteracted because we can't even think of wanting to harm them because we wish them only happiness. And then developing wisdom, which in the chapters to come, he talks about the 3 kinds of compassion, will slowly undermine any distorted perspectives. So I found this really quite helpful to know that the initial scope works beautifully with the advanced scope, when we're trying to develop bodhicitta and compassion and love. And that he also says that it's very important to think about what the causes of happiness are. And in that chapter, it says that creating virtue and refraining from non-virtue are the fundamental causes for happiness. So we're trying to connect with other living beings and wishing them to have that. He says, don't just wish that they have a house and they have a good relationship and they have money and fame, but the causes for happiness is may they have virtue in their minds. May they be able to understand what non-virtue is, and that is the cause for suffering. And so we want to extend this long-term, not just the immediate temporal happiness of this life, but also the long-term happiness in future lives. So once again, Jeffrey keeps connecting us on deeper levels, putting all of the practices together like a tapestry, so that we're not leaving the initial scope, or we're all the way over here and they don't have any relationship to other, which is why the Lamrim is so beautiful. It's kind of a building in our own minds that'll sustain the Dharma for a long time in our own hearts. So anyway, so to love and to really wish other people to have love and the causes for it is what this chapter was all about. And I found it really inspiring to connect them.